Dear seeker, let me ask you a sincere question. Have you ever felt that you are making spiritual progress, yet deep inside, something still holds you back? Perhaps you meditate regularly, read holy scriptures, serve others, and feel more peaceful than before. But despite all this, there's a silent barrier, something subtle that keeps you from fully merging into that divine stillness, that unshakable inner freedom. What is it? It is a trap so subtle, so well disguised, that even the most devoted seekers fall into it without realizing. This trap is not outside of you, it is within. It is the spiritual ego. The ego that hides behind spiritual knowledge, behind holy practices, behind the illusion of being more awakened than others. And this, dear one, is the final and most dangerous illusion. It whispers, you are special, you are progressing faster than others, or even, you have achieved something great. But in truth, as long as there is a you that takes credit, the soul cannot be free. Paramhansa Yogananda, the great master of yoga and divine love, warned us of this very trap. He said, the ego, when spiritualized, is more dangerous than the worldly ego. Because it hides behind good deeds and spiritual practices, it becomes even harder to recognize. In this video, guided by Yogananda's profound words and insights, we will explore what this trap truly is, how it silently grows even in sincere hearts, and most importantly, how you can rise above it with grace, love, and humility. Stay with me, dear friend, because what you are about to hear may free you from the last thread tying you to suffering, and open the door to divine union. Let us begin by understanding the first and perhaps most deceptive obstacle on the spiritual path, the trap of the spiritual ego. At first glance, ego may seem easy to identify. We often associate it with pride, arrogance, or the desire for fame and recognition in the material world. But the ego does not always wear such obvious clothing. In fact, it is most dangerous when it disguises itself as spiritual progress. You see, when a seeker begins to meditate deeply, experience moments of peace, or gain some knowledge of higher truths, a subtle thought arises, I am becoming spiritual. Slowly, without even noticing, the I begins to claim ownership over the divine experiences. This is the spiritual ego. Yogananda lovingly warned us, when the ego becomes spiritualized, it is more dangerous than the worldly ego. Why? Because now the ego hides behind the very practices meant to dissolve it. It says things like, I meditate better than others, or I understand God more than those around me. It may even say, I am humble, but still refer back to the I. And this, dear seeker, is where the real test begins. We must learn to detect this disguised ego with deep sincerity and awareness. Because no matter how advanced our practice becomes, if the sense of, I did this, remains, we are still bound. The ego wants credit for devotion. It wants to possess what cannot be possessed, God's grace. But the truth is, nothing on the spiritual path is truly achieved by you. All that is real is received through surrender. The moment you think, I have achieved something, pause, and remember, the soul advances not by pride, but by dissolving the self completely in the ocean of divine love. Now that we understand the trap of the spiritual ego, let us look at its opposite, true humility, which is the unmistakable mark of a real saint. Paramhansa Yogananda often said, the greater the saint, the more humble he becomes. And why is that? Because the closer one gets to God, the more one realizes that everything, every breath, every thought, every spiritual experience, is not the result of personal effort alone, but the grace of the divine flowing through us. True humility does not mean thinking less of yourself or putting yourself down. It means knowing, from the depth of your soul, that you are nothing without God, and everything with Him. It is a quiet, sweet awareness that all power, all wisdom, all joy comes from a higher source. The humble heart does not say, look how far I've come, but rather, thank you, Lord, for carrying me this far. Many seekers fall into the habit of comparing themselves with others. They may silently think, I meditate longer than him, or I've read more scriptures than her. But Yogananda reminds us, comparison is the ego's game. In truth, every soul is on its own journey. What matters is not how you appear to others, but how sincerely you love and serve God in your heart. To cultivate this sacred humility, begin each day by affirming, Lord, it is you who thinks, feels, and acts through me. Surrender your strengths as well as your weaknesses. Offer your victories and your failures into His hands. When you stop claiming spiritual progress as your own and begin to see God as the doer in all things, the ego begins to melt, and what remains is the pure light of the soul, ever united with the infinite. Now let us go deeper, dear seeker, and ask, why does the ego resist God? Why is it so hard to surrender, even when we sincerely long for divine union? The answer lies in the nature of the ego itself. The ego is the sense of separateness, the false belief that, I am this body, I am this name, I am doing everything. And the ego knows that if it fully surrenders to God, it will no longer exist as a separate identity. That is why it resists. It fears its own dissolution. The ego wants control. It wants to be the one progressing, achieving, understanding, and being admired, even on the spiritual path. But this is where the illusion becomes most dangerous. Because God cannot be possessed. Enlightenment cannot be earned like a prize. It is a gift received only when the seeker becomes empty of self. Yogananda said, you must kill this little I with the sword of wisdom and merge it into the infinite I. This is not a physical death, it is the gentle dissolving of the ego through awareness, devotion, and surrender. The ego says, I will reach God by my own power. But the soul knows, only by letting go can I be lifted. Think of a drop of water trying to become the ocean. It cannot hold on to its shape. It must let go and merge. In the same way, we must be willing to give up our little self to realize the infinite self. That is the paradox of the path. The less of you that remains, the more of God you become. And in that divine forgetting of self, true joy, peace, and freedom begin, not as something you earn, but as something you always were. Now that we understand how the ego resists God, let us talk about a powerful way to avoid falling into this subtle trap: daily self-reflection. Paramhansa Yogananda lovingly encouraged his students to live with inner awareness, to observe the mind, the emotions, and the motives behind their actions. This kind of reflection is not about judging yourself harshly. It is about becoming inwardly honest and humble, watching the ego like a quiet witness, with compassion and clarity. Each night, before sleep, take a few moments to ask yourself, did I act today from love or from pride? Was I trying to impress others with my spirituality, or was I sincerely remembering God? Ask gently, without guilt or shame. This daily check-in is like cleaning the mirror of the heart, wiping away the dust before it becomes thick and heavy. Yogananda taught us that the ego is clever. It does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers softly, you did well, you are becoming wise, you are different from the rest. These thoughts can seem harmless, even encouraging. But if you listen closely, you will see they are trying to make you the center once again. And where there is ego, God quietly steps back. To avoid this trap, learn to act without attachment to praise or blame. Serve others without expecting recognition. Meditate not to gain power or peace, but to love and be loved by the divine. Let your actions flow from the soul, not from the desire to appear spiritual. Remember, the true seeker doesn't try to be holy, he tries to be real. And in that simple, sincere effort to live truthfully, the grip of ego slowly loosens, and God's presence begins to shine more brightly within you, like the gentle light of dawn. Let us now reflect on a beautiful truth, dear soul. What happens when you let go of the ego? What awakens within you when the need to be someone important, accomplished, spiritual, finally fades away? Something extraordinary begins to blossom. When the I steps aside, the soul begins to shine in its natural light. In that quiet inner space where there is no pride, no comparison, no attachment, you begin to feel a joy that is not of this world. It is not the joy of achieving something. It is the joy of simply being, of resting in the arms of the divine. Yogananda often said, when the little self dies, the soul awakens. This is not a painful death, but a joyful release. Imagine the feeling of a heavy burden being lifted from your shoulders after carrying it for lifetimes. When you stop needing to prove yourself, even spiritually, you become free. You no longer meditate to become enlightened, you meditate to love God. You no longer seek spiritual experiences to feel special, you offer them back to the one who gave them. In that surrender, your meditation deepens, not because you are trying harder, but because you are trying less. God flows through you like music flows through a flute. Your words, your actions, your very presence become a channel for divine love and wisdom, not because of you, but because you got out of the way. This is the gentle secret of the saints. They are not great because they tried to be great. They are great because they became nothing. And in that sacred nothingness, God became everything. When you truly let go of the ego, dear friend, you do not lose anything. In fact, you gain the entire universe, because you finally remember, you were never separate to begin with. As we come to the heart of this journey, dear seeker, let us embrace the final and most liberating teaching, let God be the doer. This is the key that unlocks the chains of ego once and for all. Yogananda, in his deep compassion, gave us a simple yet powerful prayer, I will reason, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path. With these humble words, the ego bows at the feet of the divine, offering up control and allowing God's wisdom to flow through every thought and action. When we see God as the true doer, not just in our meditations, but in every breath, every movement, every interaction, life becomes a sacred offering. You are no longer trying to be spiritual, you are simply becoming a clear instrument through which God expresses His love and light. And in that surrender, a beautiful shift happens, the burden of success and failure disappears. You no longer feel the pressure to perform, to impress, or to achieve. You begin to live in effortless flow. This is not weakness, it is the highest strength. It is a deep inner knowing that, of myself, I can do nothing. But with God, all things are possible. Whether you are meditating, serving, or simply walking through life, whisper inwardly, not I, but thou. Let this become your constant prayer, your guiding mantra, your quiet remembrance. And so, dear soul, the final trap is overcome, not by force, but by surrender. Not by striving harder, but by letting go more deeply. When God becomes the doer, the ego fades into silence, and you discover the truth that was always there. You are not a separate being trying to reach God, you are a spark of the divine, awakening at last to your eternal home. Dear soul, if this message touched even a small corner of your heart, take a quiet moment now, to sit in stillness, breathe deeply, and reflect. The path to God is not a race. It is not about doing more, knowing more, or becoming someone great. It is about becoming less, until only love remains. Let not the spiritual ego, dressed in robes of righteousness, distract you from the simple truth. God is found not in pride, but in surrender, not in showing, but in silently glowing within. If anything from this video resonated with your inner journey, I invite you to write in the comments, I choose surrender over ego, as your offering to this sacred truth. Your words may inspire someone else who is silently walking this path beside you. Also, let me know in the comments what topic you would like me to explore in the next video. Would you like to hear more about dissolving the ego in daily life, or how to deepen your meditation through divine love? Or perhaps a message about the heart's longing for God? I would be honored to serve your journey through what you most seek to understand. And if you haven't already, I warmly invite you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with anyone whose soul you feel might be quietly calling out for light. Every time you share wisdom, you become a part of the Master's mission, to uplift and awaken this world with truth and love. May your heart always be filled with grace, humility, and the sweet remembrance of the divine as the true doer in all things. Until we meet again on this sacred path. Jai Gurudev.